go. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. How are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm good, good, and we are brothers. So I mean, literally in the sense of we. I mean, we're brothers from another mother, but definitely brothers from lives between lives. So here we are again on planet Earth.
Let's go there. You've opened the door to the mysteries of life and our eternal existence. So infinite, eternal, not ending, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky enough to visit that realm and in this lifetime as a human being, and I understand exactly what you're talking about because it's very familiar, it's very beautiful, it's very all. So talk to us about that we're brothers in that
Well,
realm.
yeah, in that particular perspective and belief, but once you have the veil either thinned out or open to you, you actually realize, how we are all, regardless of your religious beliefs, or regardless of your culture, regardless of whether you're born into royalty or poverty, whatever it is, we are literally here for our experiences, and we have an eternity of lives. And some who come here are quite new, and we can see by many of their outlandish activities. But there's probably, and there are those who are just doing great things and wonderful things and unselfish things and things that are showing empathy and compassion for humanity. But the main three questions I think all of us ask ourselves, and there may be another one there or two, but the first question is, where did we come from? And the second one, the question that people ask is, why are we here? And the third one is really, hopefully, people are open to, that there's more to this life existence, and I'm talking about life between lives and the eternity of lives, is where are we going after death? And is death just a rebirth, to our former true essence, as we pretty much, not pretty much, but we actually realize that we are spiritual creations of eternal nature having a physical experience, so that we can experience the duality of life between cold and hot, and fear and faith, and hate and love, and choose for ourselves the pathology, the path of which we're going to walk. And many new souls, and I call them souls because that's really, from a biochemical and scientific point of view, souls doesn't really describe who we are, other than the organization of the biochemistry of physical matter with spiritual matter and how it joins together, creating a soul. Because you can have a physical body with no spirit body and it's dead, or you can have a spirit body, uh, which we do. It's an eternal body which inhabits, kind of like a glove, and brings life and form to that glove or shoe, whatever it is, or a pair of pants, and give life to that. But as soon as we take off our trousers, you know, they become lifeless in a sense. They've lost their movement, and that's very much like the physicality of the body. But but these are the questions. Once again, the first one, where did we come from? The second one is, why are we here? And the third one, where are we going? And if you can answer all three of those questions as Albert Einstein, simply and very short, then you got it. Because Albert Einstein says, if you can't explain it simply, then you just don't know what you're talking about. And you can go on and speculate and what have you, but it's really quite simple, you know. And I don't know if you want me to answer those questions or not, or we can just leave them out there for people
Oh,
to think about. Maybe
I
you already have those answers.
I would love to hear your understanding and your awareness about these three
Yeah.
questions and your simple answers. I think I know the viewers and the listeners to this are sitting on the edge of their chair going, Yes, please.
Yeah.
just
Okay.
just remind me again, because we already know it. This is the practical joke. We already know the answers to those three questions, but we just
Yeah.
need a little remembrance.
Yeah. And people ask that fourth question is, why don't we remember? Okay. How come we can't remember our past lives? And I don't know if you've read the book, The Journey of Souls, but the
I
journey,
haven't, not
okay,
yet.
yeah, The Journey of Souls is a wonderful book for people to get an idea, because it's a science-based book that actually takes people in deep hypnosis, and they start talking about their lives between lives. And we're not talking about one or two people, but the unique aspect of hypnosis, when someone is in a deep hypnosis and you're asking them about an experience, or for example, maybe in this life you have a neck ache, and so in deep hypnosis, one of the patients was asked that question, and that question was, was, why do you have, chronic pain in your neck? And in deep hypnosis, it was, well, yes, when I was living in such and such place in such and such city, and I was actually part of a war, and then this war is then talked about, and I actually had my neck speared. So that pain was from something that took place in another time, in another life, in a different body. And these experiences go on and on and on. This is not my field of expertise per se. I'm not a psychologist, and I don't put people under hypnosis. I'm just fascinated with it, because it confirms many of my own beliefs about lives between lives. And we're talking now of a spirit world that is literally a place that we come from before birth, and that we go back to be helped, or supported, or educated, or renewed, so that we can come back again, taking on another physicality, experiencing, a new life. And this way, through experience, we become more like God. Not that we become like our Father in heaven, but we become more like God, because knowledge is power. And as we gain experience, it's the same path that he or she walked. Okay, it's the same path, and that path of experiences is what brings intelligence. So when prior to being here, where did we come from? Yes, we came from a spirit existence. We were intelligent. Some people call it energy, some people call it spirit. And that spirit took on a physical form. And that physical form has been debated many times here on Earth life, as when does the physicality, or the spiritual energy life force, the spirit body, actually take on that physicality? And I'm not going to answer that one for you, okay? Because you know, I would suggest that it happens a lot sooner than what most people think. Not at birth, but that spirit life force, you know, can can take on that physicality when it's time, and that really can happen at any time. And so we're actually spiritual beings, that are gaining experience by coming to earth, because in the spirit world, you can't experience taste. You can just remember it. You can't experience touch. You can't experience an orgasm. You have to have a physical body with the actual equipment to be able to physically experience that. But you never lose it. That's the only thing you take with you. So these bad actors and Luciferians that are trying to accumulate power and wealth and what have you, guess what, guys and gals? You're going to lose it. And you're actually going to have to be responsible, or at least go through deprogramming, to evaluate, why were you making the choices that were totally non-compassionate, where there was no empathy other than for yourself and your own well-being, as if you could take all of this with you. But there's only one thing you take with you when you go back to the spirit realm. And that realm here again is back where we came from, until we reach certain levels of intelligence that we can move on. But it's not just Earth life, it's many lives, and they can be experienced on many different places. Maybe not on this planet, but other planets. Because if you go to the beach and you look at the sand, well, if you were to count every little particulate of sand that's on the beach, all the beaches, that's how many worlds there are. There is worlds without number. And so, space travel and all of this is pretty premature for us here in this particular point of time. And I've had other people say to me, and says, you act and talk like Antoine Béchamp. And I have no evidence whatsoever, other than what other people say. He says, you must have had a prior life of which you were promoting the blood and the this third anatomical element, and it was no coincidence that in the 90s that I went back and did the research of my own work that was done in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and that I related to it as if I'd found the most precious pearl, of great price. Here was in one manuscript. Let's see if I have it. In one manuscript.
We might need to explain to everybody who Anton Béchamp is, but that doesn't.
Antoine Béchamp was a medical doctor and a scientist that lived in the mid 1800s to the late 1900s. He died in his 90s. He outlived his adversary and critic, Louis Pasteur, who he, how should I say, vehemently opposed his ideologies. I mean, he didn't just dislike what he was saying. He disliked the man and called him dishonest. He called him a fraud. Okay? And here again, we have Louis Pasteur, who is there for what? To teach us the duality, the inverted way of living, eating, and thinking. He was the inversion of the truth. In other words, they have to be existent on the same plane. They have to be, the duality has to exist. In order for us to experience what happiness and joy feels like, we have to experience what pain and suffering feels like. Okay, you can't understand pain, you can't understand hot, don't touch that, until some people have to experience it themselves, other than, hey, mom said, don't touch that burner or you'll burn your finger, right? And you said, yeah, right. And you touched it and you burned your finger. You had to do that. You don't have to jump off a cliff, which most people do. So you can experience the pain and suffering that you'll inherit by when you make impact to solid ground. There's a fence up there. There's a fence of warning. Don't go there. If you will, even though the doctors and the ambulances are there ready to pick you up and put you back together and go, oh, thank God for modern day medicine. Look at the wonderful work that they do. I mean, really? Okay. So yes, if you own a motorcycle, which I highly recommend you don't, because the accidents and the injuries that happen with people that are riding motorcycles, and I know this from personal experience, end up, injured. Not all the time, but it's a higher risk. It's not that you're a bad driver, it's the people that hit you because they didn't see you, or maybe they did it on purpose. It doesn't matter. You see some of that happens because motorcycles, at least on the freeways of on five, coming up and down the coast of California, you see these motorcyclers just jet by, and sometimes they come around you, and you go, "Whoa, where did that guy come from, or where did that gal come from?" And you go, "Wow, I'm sure glad I didn't hit that person." I mean, I can imagine for those who have been in an accident or have caused an accident or just been part of an accident, you know how you feel. You know how you feel. So, bottom line, not to get off the subject, there are warnings, and this duality of life and experiencing good and evil has to exist. And when evil becomes greater, good becomes greater, and there are great souls. It seems to rise at the same levels. So the more negative, the more god awful things that are happening on this planet, it's not that there's no good, there's no righteousness. There is, and it's elevating at the same level. People are being inspired, people are being led to the truth, their minds are being open, and that's the purpose of this life, is to experience joy, experience happiness, experience procreation. You can't do that as an energy being, as a spiritual being. You can't procreate. Only the gods can do that. The gods have a perfect existence, a union between physicality and spirituality, of which they can enjoy it all with not ever having to experience death again. They've arrived. These are the gods. These are the gods. They've attained their experience over eons of time. And so there's a lot of new spirits on this planet. And unfortunately, some of them are in our governments, and they're making crazy decisions and doing crazy things that are affecting our lives. But that duality and how we respond to us can either make us bitter or it can make us better. And I would suggest whatever you're experiencing in your life, hopefully it's joy, happiness, peace, prosperity, joy in your creations, whether they be business creations or you're building a family, which is the center unit of society. And yes, it's under attack. Uh, these are the things that I find joy in. I find joy in my posterity. I find joy in seeing others healed, and enjoy and being free of pain and suffering. That's where I find joy. These are characteristics of empathy and compassion that you only find in enlightened beings. You don't find these types of beings in some of the bad actors and Luciferians that are saying just the opposite. And you know who these people are. I don't have to name them. You know who they are. But the bottom line is that when we leave this life, the only thing that we take back to that spirit realm, which is our home, our origin, where we came from. We may continue on, or we may come back and say, you know, you really blew it. You really blew it. And guess what? Now, rather than being rich and famous, you know, you're going to have to come back as a beggar, or come back some because you didn't learn the lesson, and experience the opposite of what you had handed to you from your parents. And so these are the things. Now, there may be nuances of all this. All I know is this is my experience, because you know I've had choices in my life where I can be bitter and turn my back on humanity. I could say very vile things and be critical of others. uh but that's not my heart. That's not who I am. And that's not who I was, or who I was before I came to this earth. And I don't know how many times I've been here. I think more than once. And I don't know how many times I'm going to have to come back. But I believe that the way that we need to conduct ourselves in the case of in the midst of a storm is we need to find love. We have to find acceptance. And then once again, we need to find forgiveness, because in forgiveness that we can feel, we can actually say, as Christ hanging on the cross. Now, whether you believe that or not, whether it's a metaphor or not, literally or figuratively, Christ said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgive them. So you cannot progress with hate in your heart. You carry that with you. There's no progression. The progression comes from love. All creations of Earth and other planets, and planets without number, and souls without number, was created out of love. Einstein finally got it. Finally got it. He said, one of his famous equations was E equals mc squared, right? But he finally got it. He realized that it wasn't E equals mc squared. He was missing the component that gives rise to all creation, and that's love. Love is not an intangible thing. Love is actually an essence that is an ingredient in which energy can then give rise to matter. And without love, there is no life force energy. And without any life force energy, matter cannot be created. Now, on the just weeks, let's say, away from Valentine's Day, I'm going to write an article about this, and it talks about Einstein's work and how he came to the realization that there is a greater power, a greater source of intelligence, whatever you call that, and however you worship, and that should be protected, to be able to worship freely. That was a little different in the way that Australia was in Australian roots, because most of these so-called outcasts that were sent off in a boat from England to Australia, as let's say a condemnation or a prison, eventually, turned around to be one of the most loving, caring, beautiful places on Earth's planet. I mean, and that's how I feel about Australian people. I feel the same way about African people, but we're talking about where you're from. But Australia, out of the midst of, condemnation and persecution, they were actually giving these people, a place that they could call their home, that now became, one of the most loving countries in the world. Now, I'm not saying all the politicians are that way, per se, and a lot of the draconian laws that are presented. But here again, those are new spirits, and they're just finding their way around it. We just need to look at this as their experience and do the best that we can. So I don't know if I answered those three questions. Simply, yes, there was life before Earth, and that we were in the spirit form and energy form, and yes, we took on physicality, and this physicality allowed us to experience the duality of life. And from that experience, we take that with us to either move on to our next planet, to our next life, to our next experience as we become like God. So man is that they might be as God once was. And I don't mean to be blasphemous about this. I want to say that man is that they might be as God once was. So we are gods in embryos. we are goddesses in embryos. Our greatness is immeasurable. We are precious in the sight of our Creator. We are priceless in the sight of our Creator. So I hope I don't sound like I'm preaching, but I'm just sharing some of my more spiritual rooted, and a lot of this comes from my upbringing. But it doesn't disconnect me. My faith does not disconnect me. The science does not disconnect me from my beliefs. And I'm always looking at evidence for that, particularly in the physical world, and how people can actually make change. And I love this basic principle of physics. And there's two universal laws. The first law is the only thing in life that is constant is change. Get used to it. Get used to it. That's the only thing that's constant. And the other one is that is the law of duality. And the law of duality says there needs to be opposition in all things. Did you hear that? There needs be opposition in all things that we might learn by our experience, for that is the way and the path to godhood. That is the path and the way to joy and happiness. There has to be duality. So we have to celebrate that, even though, it's painful sometimes, particularly if you're being quarantined, particularly if you're having to wear a mask, particularly if you're being told you have to be PCR tested, particularly if you're being told, the lies about HIV and Ebola and SARS, and you have to just swallow it. So this is the problem, the challenge. I say it's not a problem; it's a challenge with Earth life. And here again, it comes back to our beliefs, our perspectives through our experience.
Absolutely beautiful, Robert. Thank you for sharing. Like, really,
I
thank
don't
you
know
for
where that
sharing.
came from, but I don't think I've spoken like that in an open forum for a very, very long time.
Well, I'm glad we could create a space for you to share that, and very powerful. And I love that embryonic definition, because in my own experience in this human life form, I have broken through or been birthed into God consciousness through
Mm-hmm.
different modalities and techniques that we have available
Yeah.
to us in this human experience. And I always think it's a little bit like I don't want to trivialize it or reduce it down to this, but sometimes I feel like we're in a video game, but we do have these power pellets, or these levels in which, or these hidden sort of secret learnings or teachings or ingredients that are
Mm-hmm.
scattered around this wonderful planet for us to discover. And it could be meditation, it could be breath work, it could be plant or animal medicines, it could be a chance encounter, a coincidental joining or union. And I had that this morning. I took my youngest
Mm-hmm.
daughter to school at 6:45 for her cross country practice. And I came home and I was just driven to, I need to go to the beach because I'm quite fortunate at the moment. I'm staying at my mum's house in Sydney and we're right on the beach for her
Mm-hmm.
unit. I was like, I need to go to the beach and I need to go right now for a swim. And as soon as the intuition starts speaking to me, I'm like, okay, something's about to happen. But I don't put the expectation that something's going to happen, but I trust that something is about to unfold.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm walking down to the beach, and all of a sudden I see a very famous gardener in Australia, a celebrity gardener called Costa. And I'm like, here we go. Of course, this is exactly what I'm meant to do, to be meeting this beautiful human being right now as the sun's coming up at this particular point in time in my history, my experience. And I gave him a hug because I hadn't met him in person before. I said, Costa, so great to meet you. I gave him a hug and we had a swim together and we talked, and we're going to do a podcast together. And all of a sudden I saw the possibilities that would unfold from this chance encounter. And then on the way out of the ocean, I got stopped by a few people. They gave me a hug as well, said, keep doing what you're doing. You have a lot of support. And then I met a guy at the showers. I was washing the sand off my feet. He was washing himself, and we caught each other's eyes. And he said, Pete, you have a lot of support. I just want to tell you this.
Mm.
And I looked into his eyes, and all of a sudden I was connected. And I said, you have very clear eyes, my friend. He said, yes, I gave up alcohol a few months ago. I said, what do you do? What, he said, I work for the Home Shopping Network here in Australia. I said, isn't that interesting? I said, so what does that entail? And all of a sudden I started seeing these infinite possibilities of just, again, that chance encounter. And we're going to connect a little later on today, but it's amazing when you follow your intuition into this realm where, without the expectation, but the intention that this is my path and what will unfold from this. And I'm just giving people a half an hour snapshot of this morning. Then I took my other daughter to school, and now I came back here, poured myself a cup of tea, and I'm having the most amazing conversation with one of the world's leading experts on health and nutrition. And now we know spirituality. And but having that embryonic birth into God consciousness, and I've experienced it through breath work and also toad medicine and different plant medicines. You have that knowing that this is a gift. This experience, this human experience, is such a gift at this particular point in time. And it's to be celebrated. And it's so beautiful you're talking about the duality, because a few years ago I had a cactus journey, and in that I got to experience what I would call the most painful experience of my entire life, that went for 18 hours over and over and over and over and over again. And my intention going into that ceremony was to have more compassion for my fellow human beings, because I feel like I've had a really blessed life, where I've never suffered depression. I've never suffered anxiety. I've never had a suicidal thought. I've never experienced pain that I witness in other people. And in that journey of eating cactus, I got to experience the darkest of the darkest emotional, spiritual, maybe not spiritual, but emotional and physical pain that I could ever fathom. And as soon as I experienced it and dealt with that and understood that I had the power to pull myself out of that, it gave me another experience that was even deeper and darker and more painful. And it just kept going, to the point where I was breaking every single time, but there was still a glimmer of light and hope and strength. And what I believe it was doing for me in that experience was, number one, giving me enough experience to understand how dark it is and painful it is for people around the world. And
Absolutely.
and but also showing me the strength that I personally have for what may come from standing up and speaking my truth.
Yeah. Well,
And
your sensitivity to that is your strength, because most people aren't sensitive enough to actually, go down that deep to be able to be risen up to a level of light that's greater than you had ever experienced before. Even if the gates of hell open to devour you, know you this, that it's all for your good. I mean, and sometimes, just as you expressed, you felt like you were going to be devoured, that you were surely going to die. But even at that, know you this, my friend, it's for your experience and for your good. And so those souls who've experienced these things have been on this path for a very long time. This is not their first, as they say in Texas, this is not their first rodeo. Okay, so you may not like that ride on that bull, but you hang on tight and you ride it, and from that experience, I mean, that's a metaphor. I don't like what's happening to the bowl, but bottom line is you become greater because of that. You
Mm.
know.
I do want to go back to the paper you were going to read about um, Antoine Béchamp,
Well,
because
Antoine, yeah, yeah, because when I was
uh,
inspired, and I had no
can I
intention.
can
Yeah.
I just can I add something to this,
Yes, you
because
bet. Absolutely.
again, I don't believe in coincidences. And today, on a page that I respect a lot, it's a social media platform that has some brilliant minds and brilliant souls, as you would
Mm,
say, that I believe have come here to create a new beautiful world.
mm,
There was debate going on in that, and it was quite a firm debate.
mm,
I don't want to call it an argument, but let's just push it up to nearly that point, of these free thinking, beautiful souls
mm,
that are questioning germ theory versus terrain theory.
mm,
And I know you have, this is your work.
mhm.
This is part of your life and part of your ability to share your research. And that's why I wanted to just interrupt you, because I know we're going to go deep into this. But at the same time, my experience is that, and where I've come to realize, especially through my wife's, what would you say, encouragement,
Mhm.
is we have to be very careful not to be anti anything. And through my own experiences, what I've come to realize is that, and this is my perception,
Mhm.
is that life is full of paradoxes, and maybe two truths can exist, or multiple truths can exist at at once, which is the
Mhm.
duality, non-duality state, and that might challenge you. And I'm really grateful to have this just chat, because this disappeared today for me, and I'm like, I'm speaking to Robert, and I know you've got
Yeah.
your own beliefs
Well,
on
we
this.
can, yeah, well, we can say that out of darkness comes light. Uh, so it's also known that, in fact, that was a basic theory of black holes, that out of black holes was born new universes. And yeah, so that is definitely, but can darkness exist in light? No. Can light exist in darkness? It can be born out of that. It can be a beginning. And can alkalinity abide some sort of level of acidity? Well, it does. That's why we have a scale that has been restricted from 0 to 14, even though I'm getting pHs that can go higher than that, and theoretically lower than that, but I haven't measured that. But it can go either direction. But really, should we say that darkness is the absence of light? And out of darkness is light is born. I mean, that's what's talked about in Genesis. Uh, that light was part of that creation, and out of darkness, life was born, and out of that light came other entities, came other creations, and definitely we are light beings. And from that light being taken on a physical body. And when we're talking about the terrain, we're talking about not only the macro terrain, but also the inner terrain. And there's a coast in Australia called the Gold Coast. And I know you know the Gold Coast. Everybody should know
Mhm.
about it. But
I was raised there.
okay, well then you probably also know what's going on there better than I do. But what's going on there is the deterioration of the coral reefs off the Gold Coast.
Mm.
So
Well,
the
it's
que-
actually a little bit further north, just on the geography side, but Queensland has the Great Barrier Reef, and
well,
yes, there's
the Great
deterioration.
Barrier Reef is being disintegrated. You probably on the Western Hemisphere, in the forests of the Grand National Park called Denali in Alaska, you see the same effects taking place in the devastation of the forest trees. The trees literally dying. and deteriorating and being destroyed from the same thing that's destroying the Great Barrier Reef. And the Great Barrier Reef is trying, as I would say, and other coral reefs are trying to save the oceans from disintegration. And by doing that, we've already seen the ideal pH of the ocean, which is 8.4, which is identical to the ideal pH of what healing takes place in the human body at 8.4. So where there's darkness or acidity in the terrain theory, you cannot have healing. All you can have is scarring. And those are the two modalities between the duality of life: healing, regeneration, restoration, or scarring, degeneration, which are two polarities between generation and degeneration. They can't exist simultaneously. So when we look at the destruction of the coral reefs due to the absorption of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, titanium dioxide, hydrogen arsenic, and the list goes on and on. There's thousands of compounds of which the ocean is literally absorbing, much like our own body is absorbing, because we are a body of water. And from that, I see the little destruction of the human body at the cellular level. So when I'm looking at, if you look at this picture, you can actually see a large coral reef crystal that's been formed in a solid state as a protection to this overindulgence of acidity coming from acid thoughts, acid foods, acid air, acid water, and the body is taking that in. That's affecting the context and creating these manifestations, not in a liquid form, not in a gas form, but in a solidified form, that as you look at this, I mean, they have appendages coming off. I mean, it's quite an interesting, a creation. You could call it blood art, for that matter. Hang it on a wall, and people go, "Wow, that's cool. What's that?" Well, that's a uric lactic acid crystal, that I picked up in the blood of someone who was dying from cancer. But these forms don't exist. So why is the Gold Coast giving up its reef? Why is it giving up its coral? Well, because the ocean uses calcium to buffer the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide, the titanium, the arsenic, and all these pollutants, the garbage that's being thrown from human waste, to, plastic, bottles. I mean, a fish can't thrive in that kind of environment. In order to protect the environment so that all things that are living within that context don't just die. And so this is where we're seeing, sickness with the fish, even the mammals that are in the dolphins, the whales. It doesn't surprise me when we hear about, a whale that's been beached, a family of dolphins that are lying on the beach. I mean, it breaks my heart because we are the cause of these things that are happening and need to take responsibility. And that is the outer world. I mean, and so there may be good intentions and better about, dealing with this, and we have to deal with it certainly, but we all are responsible for taking care of our internal terrains, and we have complete control of this because it is your body, your life, and your choice. But when I look into the human body, and when I look at this, I just want to show you a couple of pictures here as a background, and as I look at this, and I see parasites within the blood living within us from animal ingestion, and then I see trichinosis, parasites living in the blood and feeding off our nutrition. When I look at the more modern day subject of the corona effect and seeing the crowns and spikes that are created from cellular membrane breakdown due to the environment of chemical and radiation poisoning. And there's no question in my mind that cells are aging faster because people are eating the wrong kinds of foods, drinking polluted water, inhaling toxic fumes from fracking and other processes, so that we can drive our polluted cars. And by the way, electrical cars are no better. If we're not seeing the pollution come out of the back of a car, electric cars will kill you faster than a gasoline car. We're putting out 150 to 300 excuse me one second. We're talking about the magnetic field. Okay, we're talking about this magnetic field which is more powerful than the electrical field. The electrical field can be stopped by walls. The magnetic field goes completely through you, and it's measured in milligauss. Now, in the early 60s, the United States Environmental Protection Agency said anything over 3 to 5 milligauss will cause cancer. If you get on an airplane, okay, with the Rolls-Royce engines that are putting off electrical magnetic fields that are enough to kill you from overexposure. I mean, we're talking about anywhere from 100 to 300 milligauss of a magnetic field that is far beyond what the U.S. Department of the Environmental Protection Agency warned us about. Don't get too close to the TV, my mother said, because if you do, you're exposing yourself to radiation. When you're in that electrical car to save the planet, that is a friggin' illusion. Go buy a bike. Use your legs. A skateboard is less toxic, okay? A scooter. Look, these are contractions that man has created for good intentions, but they are polluting the solutions of our bodies. And it's not just chemical, it's radiation poisoning. Now, granted, we're having a conversation, that's going across, thousands of miles, and I'm able to look at you in a different day and a different time, and you're able to talk to me. I mean, isn't that wonderful? But we have to accept the reality that there's a price to pay for that. We're being exposed to electromagnetic fields that cause cancer. Okay? And so you have to figure out how to protect yourself, or you end up with blood like this, where they're giving birth to what I call, and it's called for 30 years, the corona effect. This is not viral. This is cellular membrane deterioration due to radiation or chemical poisoning. It's about the environment, the context. Genetic mutation is a result of lifestyle. Genetic mutation, or the anatomical elements that Antoine Béchamp talked about in the late 80s and published his most, his final, let's say, contribution to humanity. The title of the book is called The Blood, the Third Anatomical Element. But that's not what brought me to my knees, and it's not what brought tears to my eyes. Because when I was in Paris, not for the intention to go on a hunt for treasure, but I was inclined because I was there for my 25th wedding anniversary to celebrate it in Paris, at the Eiffel Tower and what have you. I was inclined and inspired to saying, that's not why I'm here. I mean, yes, it's one of the reasons, but it's not the main reason. The main reason I'm here is I need to go to the University of Paris. I need to go there. I don't know why I need to go there, but I need to go there. And I feel that I need to go there because I've been there before,
Your
even though
intuition.
I'd never been there before. I said, I've been there before. In fact, why pick the University of Paris? You know, I mean, what was there that was so special? And the School of Medicine, the library. And how do I get into that place? So I convinced my wife that that's what we needed to do. And so we traveled to the University of Paris. We went to the medical library, and the medical library was imprisoned to anyone from the outside world. All of the books were prisoners. They were behind locked bars, all of it. You could see the library, but you couldn't access the library. And so I walked up to the receptionist behind bars and I said, my name is Dr. Robert Young. I'm from the United States. I'm doing a research project. I'm looking for the research and, for Antoine Béchamp, a medical scientist who died, early 1900s. And she said, well, do you have a pass to get in? And I said, no, I don't. I said, do you need a pass? Yeah, you need a pass. You just can't walk into this library. And so I said, well, I've come all this way. I need to come into the library. I feel very strongly about this. I mean, how can I get in? Well, I really don't know how to help you. No pass, no entry. And this went on, this conversation, to make a long story short, for well over an hour, that my wife said, stop. You're not getting into the library. You let's go. Can we go? We've been here for hours. Stop. Come on, let's go. Let's go see some things, do some things. And as I began to accept a possible reality, which was an illusion, that this might be the case, I turned around, and as a large French man approached me, in fact, I came to his chest, I looked up, and he looked down at me and said, may I be of assistance? And I said, yes, my name is Dr. Robert Young. I'm a scientist. I'm looking for the work of not Louis Pasteur, but Antoine Béchamp. And I need to get it. Oh, no problem. I will help you. And he got me the pass. He took me in. He says, what else can I do for you? I said, can you help me with the non-digital aspects of this, computer, because everything was in file cards. I need to find the work of Antoine Béchamp. Well, he helped me find this. I didn't know what I was going to find, but I found a fortune of precious things. There was over 27 documents, 27 writings, 27 books of Antoine Béchamp, and they hadn't been seen for over 100 years. Over 100 years. And I said, and I asked the gentleman, I said, well, I'd like to see them all. He said, oh, that's impossible. Impossible. I said, well, how many can I see? I said, well, you can only write down 2 of the books, and then you have to wait to get them. They have to go downstairs, down into their archives, and they have to find these books. And so I wrote down 2 of the books. One of those books was The Blood. Another book was Les Microzyma. It was a 1,000-page discourse on all of his experiments and everything. But the beauty of this, as I discovered, and it took hours for these books to come up. It wasn't like I gave them, these are the ones I was impressed to look at. And then they said, okay, we'll be back. And, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, they came back up with these books. And I didn't have to put any gloves on. I literally was able to hold these treasures with my own hands. And as I delicately opened them, a book that hadn't been opened for a century, I went right to the index, because I usually go to the references and back to the index. And of course, this is in French. And I'm going, well, wait a minute, how am I going to read this? But medical terms are pretty standard across the board, since you learn a little Latin. So as I was looking at the back of the book, there was Antoine Béchamp's micrographs, him looking through his microscope, his stereoscope, that is actually lit by the sunlight and then mirrored to the specimen. He's taking, he's not taking pictures because he doesn't have cameras. He's actually taking his hand, looking under the microscope, and I can see him doing this, drawing what he's seeing, under the microscope. He's recording his tests, and he's writing, and there was the evidence, he was talking about biological transformation. He was talking about pleomorphism. He was talking about how germs are born from us and not out of us. They're not like cats and dogs, unique and specific. But these were biological transformations that were made up of living matter that was so small it became indestructible. That matter cannot be created based on the law of physics. That matter cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed. It can only change its form or express a new function. And yet, DNA, we look at it, it's not living. There's no evidence of life there, because if you break it down, all that's left is the indestructible matter, and he named that specifically and beautifully. He called it the microzyma, which means small being, small intelligent being. And from that, all life sprouts. All life comes from. These are the seeds of our genetic mat. These are the seeds of cellular organization. This is the seed of what organizes the blood, which then becomes your bone, your muscle. All of this is born within a perfect environment. Once a sperm fertilizes an egg, these anatomical elements which make up that sperm and that egg constitute generations of intelligence, creating a new form out of indestructible matter, which then gives rise to one drop of blood. You're looking at one drop of blood. This is not healthy blood. This is blood that's been exposed to man-made contributing factors, air pollution, water pollution, life pollution, which are under our control if we will get out of our way and literally erase, other than we can't do that because we need the duality of life between the germ theory and the terrain theory, which are two opposite theories. Germs don't cause disease. And I love the words of Antoine Béchamp when he said, nothing is the prey of death. Everything is the prey of life. Germs are just symptoms of cellular breakdown. And those germs are made up of these living, indestructible beings, which Antoine Béchamp isolated in his experiment in the blood, translated in English, the third anatomical element. This is his work here. And he expressed it perfectly. And when a body is created, when a body is destroyed, it's made up of the same living, indestructible elements from the beginning to the end, and can be reconstituted or resurrected if a proper environment is then provided. And I did that with some of the dust remains of the ancient Egyptians. Literally I've done it with the blood of a cancer patient who had died 10 years previously. We're talking about a resurrection of life, because there is no death. Death is the illusion. Death is the lie. There's only organization and disorganization, and that's contextual. And so when Claude Bernard said the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything, he was absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And the reason why we get such a pushback on this germ theory and the pressure to be able to take antibiotics, which mean anti-life translated from Latin, is because we're living and being supervised by bad actors and Luciferians who who have no compassion, who have no empathy, but want to practice the Luciferian theory that was practiced all the way back, beginning with Cain, that you can have all of this. All you have to do is take out Abel. All you have to do is kill to get gain. You didn't earn it. Sounds like Wall Street. You didn't earn it. You just stole it. You stole it. And that's a Luciferian theory. Not a theory. That's a Luciferian fact that when you do not, with your own hard work and the sweat of your brow, and someone steals from you, like they have from me or others, they steal. It may be physically, emotionally, or spiritually. I mean, you can't be destroyed spiritually, but physically, yes. But once we understand that everything is the prey of life, nothing is the prey of death, that the terrain theory is the verted way, not the inverted, but the verted way and the right and correct perspective for eternal life. And the inverted way is what's being postulated and literally flogged on us, which is an English expression, flogged on us with the fact that this is what's real. I want you to believe in this, with the only intention is to take what's not theirs, they're going to take from you. And that's a Luciferian principle. Take what you have not earned, but you do that by taking people's lives. Now, I have the power, I have control. The problem with that theory is it doesn't progress between the lives between lives. That has to be corrected for anyone to move over. You cannot steal to get gain. You cannot take someone's life through vaccination or through other types of treatment with the idea with, a genetic, not a genetic, but a eugenic ideology to reduce the surplus population. That is a Luciferian concept for power. So when we're talking about the terrain theory, very few people understand it. Very few people understand it because they haven't had the level of experience of literally looking under a microscope. This knowledge didn't come with a gun pointed at me. This knowledge came to me as it did to Antoine Béchamp by looking under a microscope. The microscope is more powerful than any gun because when you look under a microscope, the lying and deception goes away. Because guess what? Pete, guess what? The blood never lies. I don't have to know anything about you. You give me one drop of blood and I will tell you how you've been living and what you've been living or how you've been living and every aspect of that life, which is encrypted on one drop of blood. This is not normal. But guess what? Normal no longer exists because good is bad and bad is good. And this is the lie it's being postulated. Within less than 1 hour of the inauguration and the swearing in, of President Biden, within an hour, the World Health Organization announced a recalibration for amplifying what they call, which is the fake virus, the coronavirus, to readjust that, to reduce the amount of caseloads, because the more you amplify it, eventually you're going to find something. And they've been amplifying it at 45 cycles. It's now been reduced to 35 cycles to reduce the caseloads. Eventually it will go to zero, not because of some scientific breakthrough, but because of some deception that's perpetuated on the human race. This is the lie. And the lie is for power and for greed, with no compassion, no empathy, and not measuring the priceless, precious nature of a human being. So I'll debate anybody, but you better bring your facts with you. You better bring your micrographs, your blood pictures, because that's what I've been doing. I've been studying what it means to be healthy. And some of my best patients are some of the most famous athletes in the world that have embraced this because they understand that their blood is only as healthy as the environment in which it lives, that their muscles are only as strong as the blood, that their bones are only as healthy and formidable because of the blood, because the blood is the foundational stem cell and the creation of all other body cells, all other organs, tissues, and glands. It's all made from the blood. The blood does not lie. And the unfortunate thing about all this is people don't understand it because it's been kept from them. This is why I'm censored, because I have nothing to gain from this. I'm not asking for anything other than the opportunity to share the truth so that those who hear it and will open their hearts and their minds and allow their spirit to resonate with what I'm talking about, so that they can enjoy their lives, so they can have happiness and joy rather than living in fear. And the more knowledge you have, the more power you have. In fact, that's exactly what Hosea said. He said, "My people perish because of ignorance." That is the virus. Ignorance is the virus. The treatment is very simple. It's called common sense. It's called the truth. We need more voices like yours, more voices that can express the truth so that people can free themselves from the bondage of lies that's being perpetuated by these so-called governments that have our best interests. No, they have their interests, not our best interests. Now, our best interest is to tell the truth and to allow us our God-given rights, which is free agency. That's the reason we came here. That was the plan, that we could choose freely, that it was our life, it was our body, and it was our choice. And that's the way it should be, regardless of what choices maybe people take, whether I agree with them or not. The most important thing here, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, a child, or whether you're white or black or brown, or whether you're Catholic or Jewish, the rights should rest with this God-given principle and God-given truth that you are the captain of your body, that you have the right to choose, that freedom should exist perpetually. And so that's my main thing about, I guess, your question when it was brought up, because concerning this debate between the duality of life. Yes, the germ theory versus the terrain theory. And I don't know if you got that or not, but simply now spoken, the terrain relates specifically to the environment in which matter thrives in or survives in. And
you did answer it so perfectly well, and I'm loving it. And I know we've gone over time, but it even feels it.
Yeah, time is only thing that here on Earth we measure. It's an unfortunate thing, but yeah.
May I ask you one last question then?
Yes.
And it seems probably a little trivial now to even ask, because I feel like I know your answer, but in Australia, they're about to roll out the vaccines, which is even stranger. I think there's 4 about to hit our shores or be produced in our shores, or imported. 4 very different ones. What would you tell anybody that's sitting on the fence or is considering taking one of these vaccines, if we can even call it a vaccine, what's the best way you can describe to somebody so that
Well,
they understand if there are any dangers?
yeah, well, the patents are not listed as vaccines, they're listed as gene therapy. So if you research, you do your own research. If you check out these vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna and Sinopharm, I mean, a perfect name, Sinopharm from China. I don't know what the company's making the ones in Australia, but the bottom line, if you check out the patents, you'll see that they're not being patented as vaccines. They're being patented as gene therapy. This is gene therapy. This is GMO stuff. I mean, we're looking at modified RNA. God only knows where it comes from, but apparently, from my intelligence, it's coming from a 14-week aborted fetus is where the mRNA is being taken from. A male fetus, 14 weeks. Okay. Now, they may have another story for that. Are they going to disclose that? Probably not, because if they disclose, even if you add up all the ingredients, and I have the list of ingredients of which they say are in that, but I have to say it doesn't add up to 100%. So if you're looking at the vaccine per 100 grams or 1 gram or however you're looking at it, we've got about 60% of the information. What pharmaceutical companies, what are you hiding? Where's the other portions of this? What are they? Is it what I've heard? Is it technatrium 99, a radioactive isotope that's used in nuclear medical imaging? Here again, does it ever come out of your body once it gets into the blood and then pushed out into the fatty tissues? Here again, some authors are saying it's got a life of 221 to 223,000 years. So, I mean, do you get rid of any of that? But the bottom line is, if it doesn't, great. But disclose 100% of the formulation. Let us know what we're receiving, and then show me the animal studies. Oh, there are no animal studies? Well, wait a minute. The animal studies were to show the efficacy and also to show if there's any harm that could come from these types of injections. And do you have any studies that show that that immunity based on animal studies or human studies? Because this is what you've got. You've got 3 human studies going on from 3 different pharmaceutical companies, and they conclude in the year 2023. And guess who is in the study? Everyone that receives the vaccine. Okay, and that's not a myth. That's a fact. So you have to make your own judgment about what is the logic about fighting disease with disease. If you're already sick and poisoned, why would you put more sickness and poison in your body? You should put in your body what healthy people and how they keep healthy. If you want to use an example, use Tom Brady as an example. He's a 44-year-old, icon in one of the most physical sports that's ever been played or is being played. And he's playing around, some 20-year-olds, and he's 42 to 44, somewhere in that age bracket. Why is he able to do that? Because his blood doesn't look like that. This is what his blood looks like. It's a whole different program he's running. See, that's the difference. People who are sick don't have blood that's even in color, even in shape, even in size. It's all different, irregular shapes and sizes with, appendages coming off here and there. that snip off and are evaluated by RT-PCR testing. It's totally ridiculous. But out of sight, out of mind. You don't own a microscope. I own a microscope. You own a microscope. You can look at your own blood and see how well your lifestyle and diet's going. Because if one drop of blood is the evidence of creation that Muhammad said, don't you understand? In the Quran, don't you understand that you were created out of one drop of blood? Do you understand that? And if your blood looks like this, you're going to get a healthy, strong human being, physical, joined with that experienced spirit matter coming together to experience what we were created for, joy and happiness, fulfillment, and to learn and to experience. This is a school for us. But unfortunately, 99.9% of the people have blood that looks like this, that looks like this, that looks like this. And as they say in England, mate, it's a bloody mess.
I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh, but sometimes you have to.
Well,
Because
it's a relief. It's just okay. This is over the top. It's too much. Let's get it out. Let's just laugh about this, because the claims on the inverted side, from the verted side, the claims from the inverted side, this new way of living, this new way of eating, this new way of thinking versus an inverted way of living, eating, and thinking. That's the comparison. Germ, terrain, inverted thinking, clear thoughts, connection, consciousness, unconscious, infants, immaturity, no compassion, on the other side, love, compassion. This is the duality that we're dealing with it. And those, for us to wake us up and to wake more of us up, we're literally have to be shaken to the core to bring us to the point where we can embrace all this, embrace this. Karen Carpenter sang a song, and I loved her voice. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? And it goes, I paved paradise and put up a parking lot. Ooh, and so she sings about this parking lot, that they put up, and the beauty of the park or whatever was there before has been taken away. For what? Money? So the bottom line is we don't know what we've got until it's gone. People, please, listen to this, share this, wake up. This is a call to come to your senses, to go within, to thank God for all your blessings, to come from a place of gratitude, to forgive your neighbor as yourself, to love your neighbor as yourself, to love God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength, to be grateful for this experience. Because if you don't do this, you're going to keep coming back and coming back till you get it.
I was having that discussion with my mum last night, that we were talking about somebody that we know, and I said that heavily relies on the medical industry. And I said, Mum, they're probably going to come back and experience deeper pain, deeper suffering.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, and I don't wish that on anybody, but the baggage is going to be even heavier, that backpack of pain and suffering, and until, as you said, humanity is shaken up. And I think that's what we're witnessing now. And I think I'm actually very excited about this point in human history, because unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of pain and suffering coming up for a lot of people. And I don't wish that. but I can't see many other ways through this apart from
Well, a
going
lot of people
through.
lost loved ones. A lot of people, unfortunately, have taken the route of the inverted way. The inverted way. You know, a majority of the people who die in the hospital. Why? Because this is not a place of healing. They're treating those who have dropped off the cliff, and now they're just trying to put the pieces back together again. There's a fence up there. That fence is for you to exercise your common sense and to wake up to the fact of go inward to your true essence and ask your creator, for help for yourself and for your family, and forgive those who need forgiveness. But first of all, you need to forgive yourself, and then you need to love yourself. You cannot love others unless you love yourself. And so as you practice these principles, and as you start improving the internal environment through a verted way of living and eating, by drinking and eating and breathing life back into your soul, those things which will build healthy blood, those things that then build healthy organs and organ systems, are built out of four ingredients: chlorophyll, oil, water, and salt. And when you implement those foundational elements, you start building healthy blood. And as you build healthy blood, you renew yourself. And you renew yourself not only physically, because when you start feeling better, you start thinking better. And when you start thinking better, you start doing better. And all of a sudden, there's a connection. And that connection between you in this realm and from the spirit realm, when it comes together, what combines and holds that together is salt. Salt is what keeps it together. So as you're putting salt back into your diet, whole salts, not processed salts, as you're eating the green, it helps to build the hemoglobin. And these are not just, you know, theoretical thoughts. These are actually been proven out, that we can build hemoglobin, we can build red blood counts, we can provide a different environment, because cancer is not a disease of the cells, it's a disease of the fluids of the body. It's an environmental problem. So when we deal with this internal environmental problem, then you deal with the various areas of the body that are being affected, because it's systemic by nature. By nature, because it flows through all of your vascular interstitial fluids. And this can be quantified and measured. And we've done this. We've measured it. We know what the cause of cancer is. We know what the treatment is. And there's only one sickness and one disease, and that's the over-acidification of the blood and then tissues, the interstitial fluids, and then the tissues, due to an inverted, not verted, but inverted way of living, eating, thinking, breathing, feeling, and believing. You are the cause of all of your symptoms. You are the consequences that you are experiencing, good, bad, or ugly. You are the author of those. You are writing your life's book. You can write a different ending, or a different, should we say, new beginning to prosperity, to health and vitality and wellness. All you have to do is wake up and realize that you are an eternal spiritual being having a physical experience, and you are God's in embryo.
I love you, my friend. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love you back, Pete, and it's great. We've known each other for a long time, but it's good to see you again. I'm not talking about in this physical world, but in the worlds without number. Good to see you again.
Good to see you,
All
my
the
friend.
all right. All the best.
Thank you.